Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are watching or listening to this. And welcome to Link Up Leaders, your direct link to leaders in supply chain and e-commerce. My name is Lisa Kinski, and I'm joined as always by Francois Jaffray. Francois, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm hyped up. I usually have, I don't know if anybody's noticed, I always have my little cup of Noviland coffee, and I went for the big boy this morning, and she is almost gone. And we are hype today, my friend, on this beautiful Friday morning. It's gorgeous outside. It's fixing to get actually super, super hot, though. So you're probably going to hate that, but it's going to be like...
Well, it was 60... It's probably high 50s, low 60s around 6 a.m.
Yeah, but I think the high, let me just check the weather really quick because everybody's got to have weather chat on a podcast, right? Yeah, the high today is 84. So that's my happy
That's going to be hot.
Yes, that's
hot. My least favorite temperature. So
awesome. Well, today we have a very, very, very exciting guest, a very good friend. She's such a doll. It is actually her first podcast. So everybody, please, in the comments, give Becky Trowbridge a warm welcome to her first ever podcast. Yay.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Francois. It's great to be here.
Hey, Becky,
how are you doing?
How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. And you're calling in from Indiana. What's the weather like there?
Also hot. I took my dog for a walk this morning and it already felt like 65 or 70 degrees. So not looking forward to it.
Oh, that's perfect temperature. 65, 70?
Humidity.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it humid up there? Well, I'm bad at geography. Are you up? I think you're up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's humid.
Huh. Interesting. We've got that American South heat, but I'm always shocked whenever somebody else has humidity that's not like here or Florida. I'm like, how? Mm-hmm. How is it humid? What kind of dog do you have?
I have a lab. So hopefully he doesn't bark in the background. I gave him a treat and he's hanging out downstairs.
That's totally okay if he does.
Dog lovers. Yeah. We both have dogs, little old men. So
very, very old. Awesome. Well, Becky, for anybody who's not familiar with you, which I know it's your first pod, but I don't know how they can't be because near as I can tell, you and Colleen run Ecom Engine. Y'all are the women that make it happen. Go on ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm Becky Trowbridge, and as Lisa said, I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana. I've been in the e-commerce space here with Ecom Engine for almost 5 years now, which kind of blows my mind. So it's reviews are kind of what I do all day, every day. So if you have any questions about reviews, feel free to pop them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them. And if I don't have an answer, I will try to get an answer to you after this recording.
I love that. I love the response of like, if I don't have the answer, I'm going to find somebody who does have the answer. And
exactly.
Get it.
If Mr. Google doesn't have the answer, or Mrs. Google, who knows?
She's a Mrs. She knows it all.
She's a Mrs.
Yeah.
Google is a woman.
I
agree. Becky, how long, I know you've been with Ecom Engine for 5 years now, but how long have you been in the general e-commerce space?
Same, actually. Okay. Yeah, I started out freelancing and actually met my coworker through Upwork, of all places, while I was backpacking through Europe. And he was working with Ecom Engine and he was like, hey, we need a writer. And I came on part-time and then eventually it became full-time. So yeah, it just kind of grew out of other passions for marketing. And then I got really interested in the space. I love what sellers are doing and getting to know, I feel like Amazon is one of the more complicated e-commerce ecosystems because there are just so many things that you need to know. And I like solving puzzles, kind of thought about going to law school. Sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit of a paralegal, just trying to figure out like what exactly they're saying in the guidelines. So it's been like when I graduated from college, I wouldn't have known that this career path existed, but it's oddly a combination of a lot of things that I love. Like I had previously worked in content management, I'd previously worked on websites, and then being a content strategist kind of just puts it all together, which has been fun. Not something I expected. I used to think I would go into journalism, and sometimes I say I feel like I'm in online journalism now because things just move so rapidly, and it's like you have to be ready to react and get the correct information out there in a timely manner and make sure that people understand it. So Yeah, it's
and
been
you guys
fun.
do an awesome job with that. I have to tell
Thanks.
you. Like if I ever find out something new that's happened with Amazon, it's because y'all posted an article about it on LinkedIn.
I agree.
We try.
Or someone reshared it, or someone liked it, and it just pops up. Did Ecom Engine start out with reviews? Was that the first? Because I know Ecom Engine is vast. It has a lot of different, I guess, what would you call them? Verticals or products that they have?
Product
different
houses, verticals,
software
silos.
products. Yeah, we actually got started. Our founder was in the eBay space. His wife got interested in eBay, and he was an engineer. He kind of got interested in trying to figure out how to hack the system and, well, can't we automate some things? And then he started looking at this thing called Amazon and was kind of like, hey, this is interesting. And then we did a lot of like custom work for people that were wanting to save time basically by just automating these repeat tasks. And so we started Feedback 5. And that really started just to help sellers get feedback, because seller feedback, which I feel like used to be a big deal. And then now everybody's like, hey, can you come talk about reviews? But seller feedback is also incredibly important, because if your seller feedback metrics aren't where they're supposed to be, you could lose your account. It can impact a lot of things that you're trying to do, from advertising to, just building your brand. And especially now that we're in this space where people are looking at aggregation, and it's like, if you want to sell your business, you need to have all your metrics in order. So seller feedback is really kind of where you start, is what we used to say. And then, you build your product reviews from there. So we got into the feedback space and then said, okay, well, we could also request reviews, and then got more and more into that and started building out some analytics and some different features for people. Basically all trying to help people save time and automate what they can, so they can just log in, say, okay, here's what's going on with my 500 ASINs instead of going, I don't know how much you've looked into that. Amazon doesn't make it easy to see what's happening in the reviews, and especially the ratings for your ASINs. So it's like, if you have multiple ASINs and you're trying to just keep track of how are things going, how are, especially like from your side for inventory and thinking about sourcing, it's like, well, am I noticing a downtrend? Am I seeing fewer reviews? Are people not interested? And just being able to keep on top of that all the time is really powerful. So that's kind of where we came from. And then we have Restock Pro, which is FBA inventory management. We do a lot of kitting and bundling with that, and then just helping people manage their profitability, stay on track with keeping inventory in stock. And then Market Scout is FBA product research. So it's a really simple, just kind of a spreadsheet that does a lookup for you.
And that's new, right?
That back end really sucks. Oh,
sorry.
No, Market Scouts. I don't know if it was before Restock Pro or after, but it's been around for a long time.
Oh, okay. I thought you guys had like a new one that you just recently launched, or something was
one of the
going
products
to
is
launch.
new.
Something was new.
Well, we recently launched a new analytics page in Feedback 5, which looks way different. Like the UI changed a lot, so you might have seen that and thought that it was a new product.
Maybe that's what it was. Okay, but let's go back for. I'm going to cut you off, Francois. But let's go back for just a second, because, like, as the consumer, I don't know that I've ever noticed the difference. So when you say the difference between reviews and seller feedback, one of them is on the product specifically, and the other one is you actually saying how your experience with the seller themselves was?
Yeah, exactly. The seller feedback is more about, was it shipped on time? Did it meet expectations? It's all about that, like, delivery process and meeting general seller expectations. And then the product review is more about, did your product meet expectations? So they're rated separately. Seller feedback comes into play a lot more if you're fighting for the buy box. Because if you don't have the buy box and somebody's looking and they say, I want to see the other sellers that have this product, they might click over. And then if you have higher seller feedback, you're listed higher on that page typically. So it can help you remain more competitive even if you don't have the buy box.
Is that seller feedback exclusive to FBM or fulfilled by merchant sellers? Because if it's FBA, then how does that even? Because
it's a great question. No, so I've noticed, and I haven't really dove into this from the content side yet, but I have noticed that they've started asking different questions based on how the order is fulfilled. So previously for FBA, they had the same questions, and now they are basically assuming like, hey, we fulfilled it, we know it's fine, but there are still some things that they want to check on. I think like one of the things they can be ranked on is your professionalism in responding. So I think they still ask about things like that, but they're not asking so much about was it delivered on time for FBN.
But isn't there like a rule of how much contact that Amazon sellers can have with the consumer anyway? Like how much interaction are folks having?
Not much. The seller feedback is, so you can send one request per order. Amazon says that they send a request on your behalf. I personally and anecdotally from several friends and family members don't really believe that.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people that haven't opted out of requests that aren't getting them from Amazon regularly. And I know people that order from Amazon like daily. They're not getting a lot of requests. So Amazon will tell you that, but then it doesn't seem like it's always happening in practice. But you are allowed to send a single request for either feedback or a product review, or you can ask for both in the same message. So
okay.
That's basically all the interaction you can have outside of, communication about an order or shipping, or, is there a customized piece that they're trying to get details on and things like that.
Interesting. And I will say, I don't know that I've ever paid attention in my inbox of getting a request for seller feedback. I've definitely gotten the ones for product, and because it's an email and it's easy to ignore unless I'm very impassioned about it one way or another, I do trash it. But what I think Amazon does that's very smart is my Alexa will ask me about a product review, and she is relentless. And I can't, if she's like, you bought, what I just buy? Oh, the sling for Mick. It just came in yesterday, by the way. If I bought the sling for Mick, like 2 months later, she's going to say, you bought this item. What did you think of it? And if I say, she says on a scale of 1 to 5. And if I say, Alexa, stop, her response is, I didn't catch that. How would you rate this on a scale of 1 to 5? I have to do it.
Interesting. And that actually brings us into something interesting, Lisa. So back in 2019, when Amazon released the request to review messaging system, which I feel like is kind of confusing because it's entirely separate from buyer-seller messaging, which is how you would send a customized request. Amazon request to review is coming directly from Amazon. You can automate that, but when they released that at the same time, they started doing what's called one-tap ratings. So you might see now, if you go to a listing, it will say like 5,000 global ratings, and then it'll say like 500 reviews or something. And then you scroll down and there are only 500 written reviews that maybe have photos or videos, but there are all these ratings, and the ratings are just those stars. So they made it a lot easier for buyers to leave reviews. But I think it's trickier for sellers because I think there's a lot more value in a written review, both for shoppers and for sellers to get an idea of what's actually going on. I'm, spoiler alert, very into analyzing your reviews. I think that, like as a marketer, we're always trying to hear from customers. We want to know what you think. We want to know what's going on in your head, and it's like you have all of this information directly from consumers. And especially if you're a brand, like you're getting direct feedback about what they think about your products. Like use it. So I'm pretty impassioned about that. I think it's really something that a lot of people overlook, and I get it. You're wearing a lot of hats as a seller. I think e-commerce in general just involves so much task management and shifting around, and you're going from one thing to the next all the time. But I think it's really important to have a process in place for making sure that you're using that information.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to ask why it is when you get on Amazon, you do see those like 5,000 ratings and then only like 500 reviews. But sometimes I feel like you'll even see a product that says 500 reviews, and then you click into the reviews and there might only, well, that's a pretty high number. I've never noticed it like that. But I have seen a product where it's like maybe relatively newer listing. They'll say 30 reviews and there's only 5 that are visible. Why is that?
That's a good question. I don't actually know the answer. Sometimes Amazon will hide reviews if they violate community guidelines, or if they've been reported as abuse, or if there's some kind of issue. We have an article called "The Case of the Disappearing Reviews" because a lot of people have that same question, but it really varies, kind of case by case, I would say, depending on what they're looking for and why they decided not to display it.
Gotcha. Because I was going to ask if there was something bigger to it, or if it was just maybe because YouTube does that too, right? If it knows that something is like a bot, or if it's like you said, violating the guidelines, it'll send you an email saying it's there, but then it just like automatically deletes it for you. So,
right.
Yeah. Anyway, Francois, you've been trying to ask a question for 10 minutes now. Please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the back end of Seller Central kind of sucks. that was kind of, from what I've seen, it looks like a glorified Excel spreadsheet. And it's kind of just like first of all, it's an Excel spreadsheet that you can't adjust anything, but you get notifications for everything within just like one entire subsect, which doesn't make sense to me. There's got to be a better way to do it. I was looking at Amazon's progression. I think they had like 37 different iterations or something along those lines for their Amazon.com, like the customer facing. And it looked like it was like the early stage Amazon homepage. So if you Googled like old school Amazon website, and it had like a little spinning globe, I think. And that's what reminds me of Seller Central a lot. And obviously it has a lot of functionality, but it just looked very, very outdated. But one question I did have when it comes to reviews, and reviews itself is a very hot topic, particularly now because we're starting to see Amazon buckle down on a lot of the black hat, right? A lot of the, I think it was two of the largest, it was either technology or Airbud sellers. Yeah, and it was two of the largest ones that accounted for a ridiculous amount of sales were just suspended. Is that right?
Yeah.
Do you know about that, Becky?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, do you know why how they were caught, what they were doing exactly?
Well, there are a number of things that they could be doing. I know for a long time, so you can send product inserts and you can ask for a review in a product insert. And for ages, I'm sure you guys have seen this too. If you know anything at all about Amazon reviews, and you know you're not supposed to incentivize, and you know you're not supposed to ask for a positive review, and then you get this slip inside your package that says, hey, leave us a 5-star review or contact customer service. And I think for a very long time, there was kind of this mentality in the marketplace that those big sellers were too big to fail, as in, it's going to hit Amazon's bottom line, obviously, if they take out some of their biggest sellers. So, the rules are different for them and they're not playing by the same playbook. And then you would have smaller sellers that came in and they're like, well, so-and-so's doing it. Why can't I do it? And I think a lot of times with black hat things, I honestly think that a lot of it is just miseducation and misunderstanding, and having people that say that they're experts tell you something that is not true. But I suspect that some of those bigger sellers were either buying fake reviews or manipulating helpful votes. That's something else that we've seen a lot recently. So, was this helpful at the bottom of each review? And you can click the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And something that's been coming up for us a lot in terms of people having questions is, hey, I have this negative review and it has all of these helpful votes on it from people saying that it was helpful, that it explains something about my product, but it's showing up at the top of my listing because it has all of these votes. But what we're seeing is there's manipulation happening with that. So people are, there's always going to be people that ruin it for everyone, right? Yeah. So the idea behind that helpful vote is, hey, Amazon is very, very protective of the review ecosystem. They're really trying to look out for the consumer. At the end of the day, everything on Amazon is about the consumer. And so that helpful vote is supposed to be showing, hey, this is a legit review. This is actually helping people. We're going to put it first because this is what people are looking for when they're looking at this product. But the issue is when you get people that say, I'm just going to hire someone to go click that button, and then, have 500 other people click that button, and I'm going to take out my competitor because I'm going to show their number one negative review as the top review on their listing and make everyone think that their product is crap. And around the same time, I guess not at the same time, but back in December, Amazon took away the ability to comment on reviews. So that used to be my best advice for handling a negative was, okay, well, go to the review, see what it said, and then respond professionally, of course, and say, actually, you were using the product incorrectly. Actually, if that was the case, or thanks for the feedback, whatever made sense for the situation. But since you can no longer leave a comment on the review, you no longer have a way to dispute it. So you don't have any way to fight back as a seller when you get those negative reviews and then they're shown at the top of your listing and it's just taking you down.
Can you rectify those at all? Like if you have a 1-star review, is there any internal way to do it?
Yeah.
The only thing you can really do is report review abuse, but it has to meet very specific guidelines, like they have to have used profane language or given out your seller information or like personally identifiable information about you, or it's very hard to get a review removed. So
well, wait, didn't Amazon make a change at some point last year where seller information was going to be published anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah, they did. I think it still says in the guidelines that revealing your personal information is a way to get a review taken down. So I haven't seen that changing, but I will tell you that as someone who's constantly in Seller Central policies, there are a lot of things that conflict. So
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems silly that you can't just, hey, you had a bad experience. Sorry, let me give you a free one back, or this is how you fix it.
Yeah, like restaurant style. Like,
yeah,
come back for a free appetizer. Like, you know?
Yeah. Well, for customer service, and then also just like a liability standpoint, I mean, you guys are dealing with products all the time that are being shipped from all over. You know, like if you have a product quality issue and or if someone is using your product incorrectly and it's contributing to a product quality issue, like say you have some kind of electronic and they're like, oh, I'm going to use it in the pool. Hey, it did when I was sitting out by the pool, you know, and it's like, well, you as the brand or the seller want to be able to reply to that. And I had really hoped, you know, brand registry is up to over 350,000 sellers and it has all of these awesome features. And I'm like, where is some kind of brand management where you can talk back to your customers in a way that, I mean, obviously you don't, you know, Amazon doesn't want you to manipulate reviews in any way. They don't want you to ask for reviews to be removed. And they have a lot of serious rules about that for a lot of really good reasons. But it seems like if you've gone through all the work to become brand registered and been vetted by Amazon, that they should have some kind of format for you to be able to publicly reply in some way. Like, just like I said, from a liability standpoint, I just don't understand not letting people say anything about their product. And, you know, all day long, I can tell you, like, well, change your listing, you know, try to make it really prominent in your listing if there's this common issue and you want to kind of combat it. See if you get a question where you can put that in the answer. But you have to assume at that point that people are actually looking at your listing and your questions. And I think a lot of us go straight to the reviews. I mean, I'm one of them. I think having your listing optimized is incredibly important. And I think it can do a lot for your sales. But at the end of the day, it's all about reviews for me as a consumer. And yeah, if I see a #1 negative review that's like, hey, this product is trash, I'm probably going to move on to the next product. And probably going to go to your competitor, which is shown as, you know, people also purchase.
Yeah, exactly. Similar product. Yeah, I think I do the same thing. I hit those reviews. I like first see how many there are, what the average star rating is. I hit the review. I think the only time that I, as a consumer, pay attention to the question and answer portion is if something is like unclear in the listing itself, usually having to do with quantity. Like I need to know how many throw pillows are in this listing. Is it 1 throw pillow or 2? Because the picture shows 2, but the listing doesn't say, and I need 2. But let's go back to the product inserts, because this is something that I see asked constantly, especially in like the Facebook Amazon groups of, can you give us like a rundown of like what is and isn't allowed? And maybe even some things that are gray area, like can you use the Amazon logo on it, and how and what can you ask for? Just can you give us like a full rundown of those inserts?
I will do my best. I will say inserts are very complicated because the guidelines don't actually say that much about inserts. So the thing that we found is at the end of the day, you really want to be following all of Amazon's standard review guidelines and all communication guidelines. So you don't want to be asking for a positive. You don't want to be trying to offer, a lot of times people will say, hey, here's a coupon, and they try to give some kind of discount in exchange for a review. Or I've seen a lot of people try to say, leave a review and then we'll give you X, like free gift. And that's definitely a no-no. Amazon is starting to crack down on product inserts. I think for a long time, people were kind of looking at it as hey, we can do whatever we want, because how are they possibly going to enforce this? But based on some chatter I've been seeing, it looks like Amazon is really starting to pay attention. And as far as the logo, I would have to look that up. I'm not quite sure if I think you can use it. Yeah, sorry, just going through my head. I know if you're using your own logo, you can't have your URL in the logo, even if your logo includes your URL. So you can't direct anyone off of Amazon for any reason ever. So you can't say in your insert, like, hey, go to our website and sign up for, this newsletter, or go to our website and watch this video. There's a lot of stuff like that. So
interesting.
Yeah, I always kind of recommend, if you're going to do an insert, to be really cautious about how you do it. Try to keep it as neutral as possible and as helpful as possible. I know some sellers even have different packaging for Amazon, and then for other, if they're selling through eBay or other marketplaces, because Amazon is so specific about what you can and can't say. So yeah, it's a challenge for sure, the inserts.
And the ones that are able to get away with putting those inserts in that might be violating those guidelines, as vague as they may be, are they accomplishing that through FBM, I would assume? Or through a 3PL that's doing their FBA prep for them?
Not necessarily. I think it just depends. I don't know that every Amazon warehouse worker is all that concerned with the guidelines.
Oh, I'm sure.
So even if they're packing, I don't know that they're looking at it and saying, hey, actually, this shouldn't, and I know some people go ahead and pack before they send it to Amazon, and then they just have Amazon ship out for them. So yeah, I think it's all types of sellers are violating that one.
It seems like a missed opportunity by Amazon to just not sell their own inserts and just say, hey, this is Amazon compliant, pay 50 cents a product for our Amazon inserts, asking for a review.
Yeah.
But I know someone, I forgot exactly who it was, but they were describing a great way to potentially have a cart insert, and it was to stay within Amazon TOS, or terms of service, while pulling at an emotional sort of heartstring.
Is this somebody on our show?
I think so. I don't know if we talked about it on the show or if it was after, but they were saying basically on one side you could have, this very heartfelt, honest, but heartfelt story about how you are a small business, because the majority of, third-party sellers are actually small businesses, as most consumers don't know. And tell them about, your story as a small business. And I don't know if this is actually compliant or not. Maybe you can tell me. But in that saying, it would mean the world to your business if you left a review. So instead of exchanging something, just saying, hey, it would mean a lot to me as a small business based right here in the US, and we're right down the street, or whatever, however they would word that. Or, we live in your backyard, or would you leave us a review? Is that something like that? We're watching.
Say it's creepy.
Is something like that? Do you think that would be compliant?
No.
No.
Unfortunately, I think it's kind of a gray area. Amazon is really serious about review manipulation. And so there's a lot of, you can't say if this, then that. If you had a positive experience, then leave us a review. If you had a negative experience, then call us. And I think they've really discouraged, I think in the early days, a lot of people were doing that. And I mean, as a writer, I identify with that, right? Like, I kind of want to know your business story, and it's awesome to know that you're based here in the US and all of that. But I think Amazon, depending on who you're working with, might look at that as some form of review manipulation, like basically trying to make the buyer feel like, hey, you really need to help because this is a small business. It's probably less risky than a lot of other things that I see people do with reviews. Like, I don't know that it would immediately flag anything, but if you're trying to stay like completely compliant, I don't know that that's the way to go.
And if that does come up where they would flag you for not being compliant, what happens? Like, I know a lot of people are scared of being suspended, but my first question is always, well, is this forever? What is your course of action?
It depends. So I actually looked this up again this morning to make sure, because I thought this might come up. So some of the consequences are you could immediately and permanently lose your selling privileges, which is a huge deal, obviously. They might remove all of your products' reviews and ratings. So you might have to start from zero and rebuild. And your product could be permanently delisted, or you might face legal action. So there's a lot of risk involved with very little reward when it comes to trying to break the rules on Amazon, which is why it's really important to know what not to do.
Wow.
Yeah, fake reviews are illegal, right? By the FTC.
Yes, I believe so.
Huh.
That's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, and
that was a rabbit hole I dove down. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, when I started with Ecom Engine, people were still recommending, like prominent people in the industry were still saying, hey, go to this website and provide some of your products for free and then ask people to leave you reviews. And they had this whole like exchange marketplace, right, where you could go to the site and you as a consumer could order things. And then all you had to do was go leave a honest review on Amazon. Mm-hmm. And then in October of 2016, Amazon just really shut down that practice. Like it kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of sellers, I think. And it was just like overnight they changed and they made it really clear that they didn't want you to incentivize reviews in any way. So that includes discounts, coupons, free product. I think one of the biggest challenges that a lot of sellers face is coming from any other business model. Some of the things that you're not allowed to do on Amazon don't make sense, right? So like you can't send marketing and promotions to customers. You can't say, hey, here's a discount for coming back and buying, I sell a supplement, and if you buy it again next month, here's 10% off. Like you can't do that on Amazon and then ask for a review. You can offer coupons, but you have to be careful if you're offering. Right? Yeah. Subscriptions are great if you can get people, like obviously that recurring revenue is awesome if you can get it.
Huh. Yeah, that's a crazy world. It's an idea that I've been thinking of, or not really an idea, but just a thought. Would you put a monetary value on a review in regards to like how much do you think a review is worth to a seller?
That is a very interesting question. And I think it varies a lot based on the product, how much the product is worth, all the things that go into the supply chain and everything else going on in the business. But we've typically seen that you need about 21 reviews for it to really start making an impact on your listing, which is why product launch is so complicated, right? Because you're trying to get those reviews early, but you have to be really careful about how you ask for them. And there are all these kind of challenges to navigate. But, really it's recency and relevancy all the time. Amazon's really wanting to make sure that the reviews are very relevant. You've probably seen some chatter recently about variations and reviews on listings. And like, basically there were some people that were trying to cheat the system by adding new products as a variation of an existing listing so that it would come in with, 500 reviews, and then they could start advertising it and really build momentum for a new product, but kind of pretend that it was a variation of an existing product. So Amazon's gotten a lot more strict about what exactly qualifies as a variation. Lost my train of thought there for a second. Sorry.
That's okay.
What was your question again, Francois? Sorry.
Would you put
a
number? Yeah.
So from the recency standpoint, it seems that a lot of buyers are really interested in the most recent reviews and the top reviews that are showing up, like we said, at the top of your listing. So they want to see that you got a review 2 days ago or last week and not 3 months ago. So I think some sellers feel like, okay, well, I hit, 100, so I can kind of rest on my laurels, or I hit 1,000. Surely I don't need more reviews. But with the way the space is constantly changing and the way that reviews impact the search algorithm and your sales rank, I think it's just really important to keep getting them. From a monetary perspective, like I said, I think it would just vary a lot from company to company. But it's a lot. There's a reason people are willing to risk a lot to get reviews.
Yeah. Is there any point in time where if your product is doing so poorly in terms of reviews that Amazon will remove your listing. Like if your grades are bad enough in college, then you're put on suspension and eventually kicked out. Like, is there any threshold? Do they have like a minimum threshold of like quality of product?
That's an interesting question. And actually, I haven't gotten that one before, so I don't know offhand. But I would say that if you're getting poor reviews or no reviews, eventually your listing's just going to be dead in the water, and you're either going to have to do a removal order or, like at some point it's not going to make business sense for you to keep that listing. So I don't know if Amazon specifically would do anything, but you might get dinged with your IPI or, other factors related to storage limits or long-term storage fees and things like that. So you probably wouldn't want to keep it hanging around if it wasn't selling. And if it had bad reviews, it's probably not selling.
Very good point.
They do that. They do that for defects and returns, right?
Mm-hmm.
After a certain amount.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, Lisa.
No, I was.
What were you saying?
I was gonna try to make a comparison. Like it didn't end up working out. Where it's like we're not like firing you, but we're like telling you to resign so that you, didn't work out in my head.
Becky, I hope it's not too personal question, but if you were to write a product insert, what would you put on it to stay compliant? And I would imagine it's something that, sellers could use. But again, if you're not comfortable with the question itself, we can also not answer it.
That's interesting. You guys are like throwing me all kinds of curveballs today. I feel like people are always like,
well, it's just a conversation.
And they kind of freak out. Yeah. I don't know. If I was doing a product insert, I would probably include some sort of lifestyle imagery, something just kind of showing the product in action. And then I'd probably just use like a postcard and either a QR code or a link and say, please leave us a rating on Amazon and let us know what you thought of our product, and just keep it super, super simple.
Have you thought about starting to sell on Amazon or any e-commerce platform?
I have. I've dabbled with eBay. My husband and I have been selling some of his old things. When you clean out your childhood closet, it turns out you have all these weird little collectibles that you can and Amazon, all the time I'm like, I just need the right idea. I haven't had the right idea yet, but yeah, I think it's fascinating.
Oh, go ahead.
That's
gonna be my next question is like, what would you sell? Like,
I honestly probably a food product, and I know that grocery is kind of challenging, but I'm gluten-free, and finding the right like snacks and things to eat on the go is sometimes a challenge. So if I was going to get into product development, that's probably what I would do. I was just going to say what I love about Amazon and what I love about working for Ecom Engine, because we're also a remote company, is you can do it from anywhere in the world. And that is so appealing to me. Like in my time here, I've worked from Spain and I've traveled all kinds of places and just like brought my laptop along. And, we're really flexible about like working hours. So it's possible to work like a part-time day or a full-time day and still like enjoy yourself, which is really awesome. And it's something that I wouldn't trade for the world. But of course I married someone who is in a lab all the time and like cannot be remote. So
we need to have a separate podcast where we just swap travel stories, because I have to hear about your time in Europe and working in Spain. Like,
I would love that.
I just have to. Oh my God. We just sit around and shoot the shit.
Yes.
Man.
Yeah. Becky, you said something interesting, and it just actually clicked with me for some reason. The 21 reviews, is that for any product, or is that for like a product that's within a certain niche that might not have a lot of reviews?
I think that's the minimum for any product before it starts really making an impact.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was like.
And then is there like a certain percentage of impact?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
It seems like Amazon keeps a lot of stuff like close to the vest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So far, we haven't seen a difference between ratings and written reviews in terms of how they impact search rankings, because that was something we were kind of on the lookout for. I think eventually it might be slightly different, just because with a written review, if you have a video, I think it's going to be more helpful to the consumer than just the star rating. But yeah, in terms of like the actual review impact, it's all kind of in a black box somewhere.
I saw a question that was posed, I think on LinkedIn yesterday, that I'm going to ask you. And they had said, would you rather have a 1-star review on your product with no information, just a 1-star rating, or you're smiling, I think maybe you saw this too, or a 3-star review, but with this whole book written about everything that's wrong with your product?
The book.
The book.
For sure.
That's what I thought too. Because then like what you can improve on. And I was like, who would choose the no information? But what's your reasoning behind that? The same as mine, just like so you know what to fix?
Yeah. So you see what, you're hearing exactly what the customer thought of your product. And even if it's not great, like you at least know why it didn't fit. And it might not be your product. It might be how you're advertising your product or how you're positioning your product. Like you might be reaching the completely wrong audience, and a review like that can teach you that. And then you can make changes and move forward and hopefully not get more 3-star reviews.
Yeah. All right, let's see. I think Francois is having issues with the internet. Are you back in real time? It looks like there's a delay. So while he's getting that figured out, what is the most... Well, there's a couple ways to ask this question, I guess. Well, I just have lots of questions. So what's like the most common question that you get from sellers about reviews?
How to get them.
Just how to get them.
Violating. Yeah. It's a challenge. Like, there have been a lot of review changes recently. So I mentioned earlier, you can't comment on reviews anymore. But also earlier this year, Amazon phased out the early reviewer program, which we've always been very, like, we have a software tool. Obviously, we want you to use our software. We think it's awesome. That's what we do. But we also recognize that there are all kinds of ways to get reviews. And at the end of the day, we want to educate people to be compliant with Amazon terms of service, because we don't want you to put your business at risk. And so we've always done a lot of education around like, okay, well, you can do Amazon Vine, you can do, early review program, you can try this. And these are kind of like the Amazon approved ways that you could try to ask for reviews. And so early reviewer program was an Amazon program, and it was only like $60 to enroll. And Amazon would request reviews on your behalf if you enrolled. And they phased that out recently. So that was kind of one of our standbys as like, hey, you're launching a product. This is a great way to get Amazon to help you get those first reviews, because as we all know, when you don't have any reviews, it's a lot harder to get a review, right? Once you have 3 or 4 or 5, it seems like people come along and they're more likely to leave that kind of feedback. And I hate myself for just saying feedback, because I try not to do that because people confuse feedback and reviews all the time. But yeah, so just how do you get reviews without violating any Amazon guidelines? The easiest way that we recommend is actually the Amazon request a review button, which you can automate with software, which we do recommend doing, because the way to access it is you actually have to go into Seller Central, into every single order on the order details page, and click the request a review button. And as you can imagine, if you have hundreds or thousands of orders a day, that just doesn't make sense. You could be paying someone to do that full time. And a question we get a lot is how many people actually leave a review. And, with a lot of similar to a lot of things like this, you're maybe looking at like 10 to 30%, depending on your product, depending on other factors. So you could be asking for reviews all day and getting like 1 or 2, and you sent out 1,000 requests, and it's like, it's just not a good use of your time. So why not spend way less and just automate it? We do actually have the ability to schedule those request review requests. You can also, with our analytics, you can see the number of ratings received. So for a while, we were getting people asking like, am I actually, are my review requests doing anything, because I'm not getting new reviews? But then when we went to their listings, they were getting new ratings. So we brought in ratings, so you can see that too. But you can exclude orders. Like if you have a return or an order that's refunded, like obviously you don't want to ask that person for a review because they didn't even receive the product. And so there's some ways that you can automate just to make your life easier. We do recommend request a review if you're kind of like new and you don't know what you're doing and you haven't really made it a point to get to know all of Amazon's guidelines yet. I can tell you there are at least 5 different pages you should be familiar with if you're planning to communicate with buyers. And it's a lot to try to keep track of. Some of them contradict one another. I was just looking at the answers to customer product reviews questions earlier, just to make sure I was not missing anything new that had happened before I got on this call. And the first question says, oh, you can, if you have questions, Amazon requests reviews on your behalf. If you have questions, go to this information about the earlier reviewer program, which I just told you was closed earlier this year. And further down the page, they said, comment on a review. And it's like, well, you can't do that anymore. So things in Seller Central aren't always up to date, which can be really challenging when you're trying to follow the rules and you're like, well, what are the rules? So it is difficult. So if you really want to get started and you want to make it simple, the request a review button is the way to make sure that you're never going to violate any policies because it is sent from Amazon and like they've done everything on your behalf. Like they're automatically translating the message. You now have to include the order ID. It has to be sent within 30 days of order completion. And so there are some things that Amazon automates for you that are really nice. But we also see a lot of people, we talk to a lot of brands that really want to be able to send, you know, they're like, hey, we want to tell our story or we want to use our logo. We want to have something that kind of like shines a light on our business. Because I think, Francois, you said earlier, what I was going to say too, which is a lot of consumers do not realize that they're actually buying from a small business when they're buying from Amazon. They think Amazon is one entity and they don't realize that there are these millions of third-party sellers that are actually making up that environment. So a lot of brands really want to differentiate. And I think as there's been more emphasis on branding, that's become more important. You know, you don't necessarily want to send a generic request. You want to say something that kind of makes people think of your brand or is related to something in your brand voice. Amazon has made that a lot harder with the communication guidelines updates that happened last fall. They put there's a lot of stuff about styling now. So you're not allowed to use GIFs. You're not allowed to use emojis. You're not allowed to do certain things with formatting. Like you used to have a lot more flexibility in how you could communicate with buyers. And now Amazon is really trying to just standardize everything. So you can still use your brand voice, but you can't customize it as much as you used to be able to.
So, and somewhat unrelated, but you said something that triggered it in my head. I recently noticed on Amazon, probably within the last, I don't know, month maybe, that now in the reviews, it has this subcategory for, I think it says like reviews of this product from other countries. What is that change and why? Well, they never say why they do things, but like what is that? When did the change happen? Like, what's the intended purpose of it? Like, what is that?
So that it's hard to say when it happened. I think it's been in some form of beta rollout for quite a while. I've been seeing it for a long time in other marketplaces. So that was actually one of the reasons when they closed the earlier reviewer program. They said, hey, we rolled out one-tap ratings, so it's easier to leave reviews. And also we rolled out these global ratings. So you're getting reviews from other marketplaces that are kind of showing all of the reviews for your ASIN in whichever marketplace you're in. It's a little tricky. I feel like it's still kind of in beta maybe, because for some products we see it and for some we don't. But the idea is, for a long time, it was always if you didn't have any reviews or if you just had a couple of reviews, and let's say you're a US-based seller and you started selling in Germany, they would show, you know, your US-based reviews on your German listing so that German shoppers could say, oh, okay, this product is legit, you know. But at the end of the day, German customers really want to see German reviews. And so like as you started getting reviews in the local marketplace, I think the idea was that they were phasing that out. But now I think as Amazon is getting increasingly globalized, I think they're more interested in showing, you know, all of the reviews for the ASIN in one location. But they just separate it out so that, like, hey, maybe there's a cultural difference. Like maybe people in the UK have a different experience with rain than people in Seattle. And so maybe this person didn't like this rain jacket because, it was too warm, but in Seattle it would have been perfect, or, things like that. So I think it's just to help you be more discerning as a shopper.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. And I think I have noticed that too, that it's just on some and not others. The
Are you here,
delay
Francois?
is so bad today for some reason.
Yeah. Do you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to ask the difference between, or I guess, is there anything that a seller can do if they're getting seller feedback in their reviews?
Yeah. You can, let me make sure. Believe you can report that to Amazon and try to get it changed, or else they'll strike through it. I think maybe they just strike through it. So it kind of depends. Like if you get a nasty seller feedback, you might want to go to Amazon and say, hey, if you get like a 5-star seller feedback and, it was all about the delivery experience or whatever, you might just say, well, okay, can't really change that.
Yeah. It's like kind of pick the battles at that point in time.
Yeah.
But that is a good point. Yeah. Cause I feel like folks will just write anything and everything about their experience, like product, delivery, packaging, all in that one spot, where that might not be the place for it, but that's where it's going to go.
I think it's very confusing for consumers. And I also think that consumers don't really understand what's at stake. So I think a lot of times they don't get how much their review actually does impact the listing and how much it helps that seller. And so they're just like, why do you keep asking me for reviews? But they don't understand like all of the pieces that go into making your listing successful. I think a lot of people think still that e-commerce is kind of like, oh, I just had some stuff that I listed on, just like I said about eBay earlier, like, oh yeah, we're selling some collectible like figurines that my husband had from like his gaming days. But that's really not how Amazon works now. And honestly, if you're not ready to be in a business and you're not ready to like really know what you're doing, I don't think Amazon is the place to try it out. Because if you get banned, you're banned. You can't really do anything about that.
Yeah.
So that also brings up something that I wanted to make sure we covered today, which is, so you might have seen the Amazon App Store, which is where you can find different tools and services that Amazon has kind of vetted. They've been through Amazon's processes so that they can make sure that they're adherent, at least trying to be adherent to Amazon's guidelines. I have heard of people recently getting suspended or having issues because they were using tools that were not in the App Store. So just as a general, do your homework with anything you do with Amazon, like, don't just believe me. Go look at the policies, go make sure that what I'm saying is true. Don't just assume that a software is perfect because they're telling you they are. You really need to make sure that Amazon is paying a lot of attention to everything happening in their space. And so you really need to make sure that whatever software you're working with, they say in the community guidelines, I believe, they say you're responsible as a seller no matter what software you're using, no matter what they're doing. If you authorized it, you're ultimately responsible for it. So anything that you're doing on Amazon, just make sure that you're doing your homework and you're talking to people that know what they're doing and have been through the ropes, and don't just fall in. I know there are a lot of groups, there are a lot of like gurus and experts, and they don't all know what they're doing. So just be really careful. Yeah, exactly.
I was about to say. Well, can you walk through that? Because a lot of that goes a little bit over my head. So what would be a software or a service that somebody would go to the Amazon app for?
Oh, well, pretty much anything.
Okay.
Yeah, let me pull it up.
Like, would they go there to find somebody for like PPC or something?
Yep.
Okay.
Do that. Feedback and reviews, inventory, all kinds of stuff.
So then how does Amazon know who you're using?
So the difference is if you're using the Amazon App Store, you actually have to authorize through Amazon. So like we're connected to Amazon. through a couple of different ways, but basically when you sign up for a tool from the App Store, you authorize it from within Amazon. So you're giving them some access to your Seller Central account, and Amazon is aware of that relationship.
Okay. So it like opens up like an API integration or something like
exactly.
that. Okay. Yeah. So they can see, Amazon can see whenever they enable that connection, who it is that they're letting you use. But their services, you're saying that company A may be on the Amazon App Store and legit for PPC, but company B might not be.
Yeah.
So a reason that a seller may be utilizing company B over A is cost or misinformation or lack of information?
I think misinformation or lack of information. I heard from someone recently that was taking a course actually on selling on Amazon, and she used the software that the people that ran the course had recommended, and that software was not in the App Store. And then she started having issues. And again, like if you don't know what you're doing, it's really easy to break the rules because of all the things I said. I mean, how intuitive is it to say, hey, thanks for your purchase, here's a 25% off coupon for your next order? You know, like you can't do that, but it's really easy to think that you should, or, you know, you're just trying to follow business practices. And I think that's also why it's really important to work with people that are familiar with the Amazon space, because I think, you know, you can hire marketing consultants all day long, but if they don't know what they're supposed to like adhere to and which guidelines they have to work within, they can be giving you bad advice. And so I don't think that it's necessarily, you know, malicious or mean-spirited or people trying to, you know, ultimately, I think they want sellers to succeed, but there are lots of people out there that just aren't aware of what they don't know. And one of the things that's really important to know is you want to make sure that anything that you're connecting with API is part of Amazon's App Store, because that means that Amazon has vetted it, they're aware of it. You also want to go in, and if you're a serial product experimenter, like let's say you tried 10 different feedback tools or whatever, like you want to go in and make sure you don't still have access for all of those. You know, like it's probably a good idea to just set up like quarterly or, you know, twice a year or something, just go in and make sure that your Seller Central settings, you're not sharing product information, or sorry, Seller Central information with tools that you're no longer paying for or using, just from a security standpoint.
Yeah. And are there apps? I'm sorry, not apps. Are there providers or like those platforms that are on the Apple App Store that are, I'm sorry, good God, Amazon. I ran out of coffee. On the Amazon App Store. I don't even have an Apple phone. On the Amazon App Store that were on the App Store at one point in time, but were later removed because maybe they didn't upgrade their API integration to match whatever upgrades Amazon had made. So like, is it possible that a seller will begin using a service that's on the App Store that is then later removed without their knowledge because of something that the company didn't do?
Not that I'm aware of. I think Amazon is pretty good about communicating with everyone that's on the App Store. Like we're part of the Marketplace Developer Council, and they will come to us and say like, hey, you need to update this, or, you know, and they make sure that we're complying. We really make it a point to comply with Amazon as much as possible. Like that's what we do all the time.
Yeah.
Try to help sellers be compliant. We try to be compliant. We take this very seriously, but I think as far as I know, no one's gotten kicked off the App Store for not complying with Amazon.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So pretty much once you're in the club and you're good to go.
I think so.
For the most part. There's no blanket answers with Amazon.
Exactly. That is very true.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, this has been such a great, very insightful, very informative conversation. Becky, thank you so much. I really hope that anybody who has any questions about Amazon reviews either has them answered from this, or if they have some other questions that we didn't ask, how can they get a hold of you? And tell us a little bit about Ecom Engine too. Let's give you a chance to plug the business.
Sure. Well, you can contact me, you know, connect on LinkedIn. I'm on there, or by email. I don't know if you have any kind of like follow up with people that are watching, I guess.
If you're comfortable with us, we're going to put the website for Ecom Engine in the description of the video and the audio. And if you're comfortable with us putting your email, we can. And if not, I totally won't.
Okay. Well, maybe our contact form is better, just because they'll make sure I get it. But if you have questions about anything, we do offer free product review strategy calls. We just go through with you like the options that you have for requesting product reviews. We'll talk about, like I said, some of those Amazon Vine, no longer their early reviewer program, but we'll talk through what's available to you as a seller, what's compliant with Amazon, and we'll really make sure that you understand all of the rules. If you decide to be a customer, we constantly communicate about that. I feel like sometimes I'm like, man, I'm just talking about the same thing all the time, but I think people still have a lot of questions, so it's important. We do have quite a bit of content. You know, as the content person, I have to plug that. We work really hard on. So we have a review guide that just kind of goes through everything that we talked about today, like what's allowed, what's not allowed. It links to a lot of our other content that might be really helpful. So I'll give you that, Lisa, if you want to put that link with the show notes. But yeah, Ecom Engine, like I said, we have Feedback 5. It allows you to automatically request reviews and feedback. We make it really easy, whether you want to use the Amazon request a review functionality or whether you want to customize and use buyer seller messaging. We will walk through that. We will hold your hand as much as you want. We do onboarding. We'll do one-on-one onboarding with you. We'll train your employees, like whatever you need to be set up successfully. If you've been using our tool for a while and you have questions, or you just want to make sure that you're optimizing for success and you're doing the right things at the right time, we're always willing to get on the phone and talk through that with you, or respond if you just want to send an email or live chat. I know some people are kind of like, I don't want to get on the phone. So we have other options. We have we have a really robust help center that walks through a lot of policies and questions. And so like, even if you're not a customer, we make all of this free and available to you. We also do a lot of webinars. We really make it our mission to try to keep people educated about what's happening in the industry as a whole. And, it's there. Like, you just come take it. It's right there on our website.
Yeah. You've just got to go get it. Yep. Awesome. Well, Becky, thank you again so much, Sheer. It's been an absolute pleasure. What do you think of your first podcast experience? Fun, right?
It was awesome. Yeah.
Good.
It was nice to be able to see your faces while recording, because I wasn't quite sure what it was going to be like. So it's nice to see your smiles.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I could have been a little more descriptive in the email, but oh, well. C'est la vie. All right. Awesome. Well, Becky, thank you so much, doll. It was an absolute pleasure. And Francois, as always, thank you for being here. I don't know if there's still a delay. But if you guys liked what you heard or saw today, please be sure to give this a like, a comment, a share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We go live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube every single week with conversations with leaders in supply chain and e-commerce like Miss Becky here. So Becky, again, thank you so much, doll. Thank you everybody for watching and listening, and we will be back next week. Bye, you guys.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.